Namaste, I'm Nisha Onta. I'm the Executive Director for GovLab, which is a research consulting company in Nepal. We established GovLab on 2019, January 2019. That's when we registered the company. And we have been physically present in this office since June of that year. Pandemic, like for everybody else, it was a shock to our system, I should say, and especially for a small, new company that we were just establishing. We had big plans for 2020, but we had to halt that. Number one was, of course, asking everybody to work from home and making sure everybody is, have the access to the internet, have computers and other things that they need to perform the work. But also in terms of the mental challenges of being at home and working, and also having that routine. For young researchers, I think that was one of the challenges as managing researchers, because it's always good to have them in the office and have that kind of routine. But suddenly everybody was at home, so what could we do? So in terms of workplace issues, we had to put in daily check-in routines and meetings, and we even tried to do some kind of meetings that was not related to work, but just to talk, because we were missing that chance to actually meet during lunch or coffee break. So we wanted to keep going with that. And I must say everybody was very interested, and most of the researchers actually were very excited to actually work, because there's so many news and so many things happening, and there's but we kept on going. We conducted research during that time, which was difficult, but we did everything online through phone calls and internet. We conducted trainings, we published a couple of briefs as well during that time. So though it was challenging, I think we were able to figure some things out and work. Of course, we were working half capacity. We must say whatever we achieved was probably just 50%. But everybody was suffering during the pandemic, so we could not rush things. The other critical thing, I think, for a young company and any other organization during the time was access to funds to conduct research, and we rely quite a lot on donor funds still in Nepal, as you know, and especially for our company as well. And I think everybody's priority changed during the COVID, and research perhaps was not research, and especially the kind of research we're doing was perhaps not the focus. Yes, in terms of research methodology, I think for a quantitative researcher, and especially if you are working primarily with secondary data, perhaps the pandemic did not affect them as much, because you're just making sure that you have the access to data, and then collecting that, and then analyzing that. But we had to of course collect primary data for some of our research. So what we did was we actually went completely online. So the training for the enumerators was done online. We made sure that we got access to a new online software called Survey CTO, which was new software for us. We started using that to store and collect data and conduct analysis through that. So yes, so that we need to put in some investment on some softwares that we can use. And then of course making sure that everybody has access to internet. So a little bit more expense on on access to the internet and data and 4G and all that, which we didn't have to bother when we did in-person survey. And there were other kind of expenses, so we kind of have to pivot into that. And also it required the team to be more vigilant, and also team to be more engrossed, in the sense that are the data coming in? If it's not coming in, why? So we had to do those, and everything happened online regarding that, collecting primary data. But I think for a qualitative researcher, which I consider myself to be one, it is a little bit tricky, because we try to do some focus group discussions, online focus group discussions, but the online is still a challenge, right? Even if you do it in US or in Nepal. The local government and people in the local level were actually very much excited, and they attended a lot of our workshops, and even attended our focus group discussion. But the nuances that we want to observe when we are doing qualitative research, the group dynamics, when people don't speak, when people look away, and the way that they sit in the group, those kind of observations, those were the interesting bits of qualitative research that I find it very interesting, the observation part. We lost that. and we still don't know how to do it. We still think like, perhaps focus group discussion is a way to go forward. And of course, Zoom, and lots of people are, very much aware of using Zoom. So that does give you the flexibility, but still, that group dynamics, understanding the group dynamics, and that feeling, that observation part of methodology, we are still lacking that, and we're still trying to figure out what would be a good way. And especially if we're talking about some sensitive topics, doing it like, face to face is a lot more easier. We would sit down with them, we would talk to them, and sometimes, we'll just ask a relevant question after talking to them for like, 20-30 minutes. But because you have, scheduled a Zoom call, you kind of have to like immediately get into the question and answer. We cannot just like, have a conversation and, get an information. So in terms of collecting those kind of qualitative data, I think it is still difficult, and we're still learning. Number one is like, as a researcher, I think we have to be very flexible, and we had to be flexible, right, to get things done. And of course, the number one priority was health of everybody. So we are not going to like, let our team like travel to, during the pandemic. That was a big no-no, of course. But in terms of research techniques, I think we just have to, kind of go back to the books and be like, okay, how can we collect information like in terms of phone interviews, when we do phone interviews? How can we do those phone interviews more effectively? How can we, and perhaps, phone interviews were maybe just a validation tool when we were having in-person surveys, but now that is our primary tool. So we have to like practice. We need to like go through the script, maybe design the script in a different way, so that in order to like collect data in a more effective manner. So I think we have to be very flexible, and then change gears. And I believe that our team was able to do that. We're still learning. We're still conducting surveys and research online even today. And we are like planning to do some experimental research and things like that as well. But yeah, it's a learning curve, and we're still learning and growing. What the pandemic has taught us is that we cannot be comfortable with our like limited or our focused research method. We need to learn, we need to innovate, we need to be very flexible. If you see yourself as like a quantitative researcher with like getting like data and R as your tool, great. I think that has a lot of value. But when you work on the field and work on like collecting primary data, you need to know like every other kind of tricks of the trade, and you need to build your skills in it. Of course, you can focus on specific skills. Like for example, I consider myself more of a qualitative researcher, mainly because I enjoy it a lot more. But that doesn't mean give me the the liberty to be like say like I don't know how to do quantitative analysis. I mean that we cannot do that. We have to be very flexible. Well, I mean right now I cannot collect any primary data the way that I would have liked to. Right? So now I have to rely on a lot of secondary data. And that makes me like and then also quantitative data as well. So now I have to shift gear and like conduct my research in that way. So I think for a message to all young researchers is that hone your skill, learn and experiment and find out as much as possible in all kinds of research methodologies, and be flexible. And one thing you would have to learn is that you have to like polish your skill. Throughout your career. So make that a habit, learn, and also like engage with others. Form groups of other researchers who are researching in completely different sectors and completely different methodology, and just share ideas, learn from them. Even if you cannot like take a course, for example, you can always learn from each other. And I think that kind of networking something that you should do. Yeah, so that's my message.